Hi, I'm Jim Anderton, technical editor of SSGM magazine, and I'm here at the ACDelco studio at Cars Training Center in Richmond Hill, just north of Toronto. I'm going to talk about something pretty ugly. I'm going to talk about bigotry and prejudice. In this case, automotive bigotry and prejudice involving the kind of replacement parts you use for popular applications like this Japanese Honda Civic. Okay, here's a question for you. If you're a technician, do you have specific preferences in the kind of replacement parts you use, and do you make them specific to the brand of automobile you're working on? I know historically in spark plugs this was a very popular thing to do. Japanese cars, for example, Denso, NGK. American cars, Autolite, Champion. In this case, we're going to look at rotating electrical, specifically alternator and starter service. This is a Japanese car, a Honda Civic, ironically made in Anderton here in Canada. We're going to ask a basic question, which is, can you use American quote-unquote replacement parts, in this case specifically ACDelco parts, and make them work successfully on a direct fit basis on this Japanese car, this Civic? Let's give it a try. We're going to start with the starter. In this case, the first step we use in starter service, ironically, has nothing to do with the starter itself. It's here. Scan the car. The primary reason we scan the car is quite simple. We're going to disconnect the battery as a basic safety precaution and just a common sense operation for starter or alternator service. When you disconnect the battery, depending on the vehicle, it's fairly certain you're going to lose some codes. Codes are important not just for the problem that we're working on in this case, which is rotating electrical, but anything else involving drivability with the car. It's guaranteed that if you wipe those codes, lose a drivability code, repair the immediate problem, send the customer back on the street, there's a high likelihood, or at least a possibility, that they will encounter difficulty when they drive off, and they will blame you and the repair you did, regardless of whether or not it's related to the rotating electrical issue. So step one is get to the socket, scan the engine. Rotating electrical is about current. It's about putting current into this battery and taking current out of this battery by the alternator and starter respectively. So the logical place to start, not just for safety but for common sense, is with the battery. This battery in particular shows an obvious sign of distress. We have white fluffy corrosion on the outside. It's filthy. The battery terminals themselves are corroded. The battery bracket holding it down, the hold down is loose. This is a definite problem child, and this is a place to start. Right off the bat, this battery should be cleaned, it should be tested, and charged if necessary. This can best be done off bench in this application, because we want to take this out to get access to the starter anyway. Batteries. Are batteries part of rotating electrical? Yeah, they are. They don't rotate, but batteries are where the current goes in and where it comes from. And if the battery is no good, I can guarantee you, you will have problems with the starter and or the alternator. This is not an upsell. If the battery is toast, like this battery is, supplied from a major Canadian auto parts retailer, it should be replaced with something new, or at the very least, cleaned and charged. All right, two important facets of starter service. One is in many vehicles that the main fuse is a critical part of the system. So in this case, fuse panels easily accessible, easy to inspect the fuses. Main fuses, it's easy to see when they're blown. It's not easy to see when the contacts are corroded. Depending on the symptom, a hard starting, difficult starting, which you suspect is not directly related to the starter, it may be sensible to unscrew this and take a look at the contacts in the back, especially if you see signs of the plastic melting or deforming under heat. The other thing to keep in mind is grounds. Grounds are essential both in alternator and starter service. And a modern vehicle like this, there are numerous grounds, so many in fact that there's often a ground circuit diagram in the shop manual. So I'd recommend definitely work with the grounds you can see, but find the grounds you can't see by consulting your technical database. When speaking of engine grounds and rotating electrical, it's important to remember the simple basic fact. Starters and alternators ground through the engine, and the engine is of course rubber mounted or isolated from the chassis of the car. Now, logically, body grounds or engine pigtail grounds like this are present in this case in a couple places. This upper one here mounts between the body structure and the top of the valve cover. Now, the interesting thing here is you may notice a very, very tiny additional pigtail that runs off the side of the rocker cover to this central bolt. One of the reasons this is here is because there's a rubber bushing that isolates the valve cover, cam cover bolt from the lug attached to this ground strap. If you take a look at this, we've got corrosion. We have definitely some fraying, some wires. This is a poor ground. A logical first step would be to deal with this ground. If you can't ground the circuit, you can't complete the circuit, and you'll definitely get questionable results with either rotating electrical, starter or alternator. All right, here's the main power lug, the heavy current cable to the starter. In this case, it's protected by a nice rubber boot, which has kept things nice and shiny in here. You'll see, of course, several different ways of fastening this thing. One is by a nut with a captive lock washer. Others are by a lug, which itself is serrated to act like a tooth lock washer. But in this case, it uses just a simple split ring. This is like a very skinny split ring, like an AN type washer. Special washer, special nut. It probably really helped to not lose these. Here's a case of what I described earlier. In this case, we have a lock washer which is captive to the nut. The lock washer itself has been squeezed flat. It no longer has its spring, as a split ring should have, and has a corroded face across the front. Now, this corroded face is important because this is a primary current path, and this is a high current situation. This is low voltage but high current. It's really important to get this scrupulously clean before you put this together again. And remember that if it's corroded on this face, it's also going to be corroded on its matching face on the starter itself. All right, we have the alternator loosened now and the pivot bolt removed. The pivot bolt is a steel bolt threaded through an alloy housing in the alternator. So of course the alternator is corroded, swollen, and trapped the pivot bolt. That makes it necessary to use heat or perhaps a cut-off tool or a pry bar and a big hammer to get this thing loose. Difficult to maneuver under here because of the half shaft and the suspension components. Now the manual says to simply remove bolt and remove alternator. We've determined that removing it from the top will be almost impossible due to the long runners of the intake manifold, so we're going to take it out from underneath. One of the things the factory manual, shop manual, won't tell you is that to get this alternator out, you've got to remove the cast iron alternator mounting bracket. Beautiful and somewhat heavy cast iron piece. The trouble is this threads into an aluminum engine block, so you can imagine the corrosion issues here. This will go back together again with anti-seize for sure. Things the manual won't tell you. The manual simply says remove alternator, but they don't say how. Through the top is essentially impossible because of the intake manifold and the master cylinder. So the bottom is the way to go. Even the bottom is a tight fit. In this case, we've used the chassis lift to take the weight off the wheels to drop the half shaft down low enough to get the alternator in and out between the half shaft, the chassis, and the oil pan. Even then, it's a tight fit. Rotating electrical is now out of this vehicle, and we've got it down here on the bench for inspection. Over here we have two ACDelco remanufactured replacement starters, and here's the original starter out of this vehicle behind me. As you can see, you have options here between literally exact fit replacement and a similar model from a different manufacturer, which is an equivalent fit, which will work. ACDelco, in fact, has 4 part numbers, believe it or not, for this single application of the Civic behind me. On the alternator side, it's the same story. Here's the original alternator. This pineapple, as you can see, is completely corroded. It's no surprise with these open ventilation ports and how low it sits in the engine compartment that it's shot. Once again, the ACDelco remanufactured unit is an exact fit replacement. This makes it easy to choose a replacement part from a single supplier. ACDelco in this case can clearly supply any one of a multitude of part numbers for an application like the Civic behind me, exact fit and also equivalent fit, whichever way you want to go. When you're purchasing a starter and alternator, of course, inside the box you'll often find lots of paperwork. Installation instructions, special warnings, mounting diagrams, checkpoints, and something that's often discarded, and that is the performance check and the warranty card. In this case, these ACDelco units have a multiple testing system and an output curve printed on an official piece of paper labeled the quality document or approval document with the part number. A really good idea is to hang on to this, not just hang on to this, but give it to the customer, include it in the work order. Give them a sense that you've installed high quality parts, they've been tested, so they know they'll perform well. Could help reduce comebacks. All right, we've had to remove this cast iron mounting bracket to get the alternator out, so it's got to go back in first. In this case, they're fine threads, steel threads threaded into aluminum block. I like to use just a little bit of thread locker. I'm using Loctite 243 because it is surface insensitive, and just a tiny bit will do the job. The rest of the installation went smoothly with the ACDelco starter and alternator fitting perfectly in place of the OE parts on this Honda Civic. And the job's complete. Starter, alternator, re with the ACDelco remanufactured parts. Perfect fit. Now we're going to turn the key, see if it all works. And there it is. The engine starts readily and idles smoothly. I'm Jim Anderton, technical editor of SSGM Magazine.